And welcome to the Tuesday, April 15, 2025 edition, fresh edition, that is of your newspaper review segment of Inside Nigeria. My name is Jennifer Dupepa, your host on the program. It sure feels good to be alive, especially in present Nigeria. But today, on this first segment of the show, we are looking at what the papers are saying, including Nigeria's most influential newspaper, Leadership. Let's go with Leadership first before we start on other papers. Leadership's leading story today says PDP governors reject Atiku Rufai Obi's coalition. Open doors to new members. Feast neck meeting for May 27. Condemn insecurity in Borno Plateau, Katsina, and Edo. Leading story on Leadership, Nigeria's most influential newspaper. And of course, it's that same leading story that is gracing the paper. Some of the papers I have on my lineup. Still on Leadership, multi-choice reaffirms commitment to Nigeria. We've implemented 95% budget in FCT, Nation Wiki. Cannot reopen 10 boarding schools. Ulama Council rejects terrorist tag on 2-year youths. We have the story of the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, flanked led by Senator Philip Adudua and Senator Mao Ohambowa and other officials during the inspection of the ongoing rehabilitation of the International Conference Center, Abuja, yesterday. That's the picture we have on the cover of Leadership newspaper. We move towards the masthead. Again, bandits kill 49 in Fresh Plateau attacks. Again, bandits kill 49 in Fresh Plateau attacks. And on the business boss, Genco's threatens total shutdown over 4 trillion naira debt. Genco's threatening total shutdown over 4 trillion naira debt. Genco's refers to generation companies, that is Nigeria's electricity generation companies, Genco's. They are on the brink of a total shutdown due to an outstanding debt of approximately 4 trillion naira owed by the federal government, which they say is currently threatening their operation. The debt, comprising legacy obligations and unpaid subsidies for 2024, is severely undermining the power sector's inability to function optimally. Excerpts from the leading story on the business boss of Leadership this Tuesday. Genco's threatening total shutdown over 4 trillion naira debt. That takes us to the stories about the masthead. Trump threatens new tariffs on smartphones. 2027 don't replace Shetima. APC begs Tinubu. From that, we move to the page 3 of Leadership, where we have our stand. Today's stand is on democracy without immunity. Democracy without immunity. Today's stand in Leadership newspaper. From today's stand, we move to the back page where we have Tuesday column with Abdurrauf Aliyu. And today Aliyu is writing on Beyond the Tariffs, a battle for global dominance. He's talking about the Trump's trade hike tariffs. He says, Beyond the Tariffs, a battle for global dominance. In quote, this trade war, championed by the Trump administration and defended by figures like Vice President J.D. Vance, is not just about economics. Of course, you'll find out what it's all about, since the columnist Abdurrauf Aliyu says it's not about economics. So you have to log in to read more on Tuesday column today to find out what the trade war is all about. Anyway, before we leave the back page, let's go to Ghana Must Go. Ghana Must Go says presidency disowns 2027 campaign billboards, the news. And the reply, they are also public documents. Very interesting, of course, an innuendo to the court judge ruling on releasing documents concerning the president. It's on that note we conclude review of Leadership newspaper today, Tuesday, April 15, 2025. Don't forget to log into the website for continuation of the stories. We'll move to the next paper incidentally, where we have the same leading story like Leadership, and that is the Punch. The Punch says 2027 Atiku blog defies PDP governors over coalition talks. Atiku blog defies PDP governors over coalition talks. SBP insists on 2027 pan-Nigerian project as PDP governors distance party from coalition talks. Leading story today on The Punch. We have a second story today on the Punch newspaper. Tinubu orders offensive as fresh plateau attack leaves 51 dead. We see the picture on the cover of The Punch. We see some military men and some women, mourners who are actually mourning their dead, sitting down while they are being buried. The mass burial is taking place for those that were killed by herdsmen. Nigeria's external debt servicing may hit $5.2 billion. Fitch. Khan challenges Kano's blasphemy law after ECOWAS verdict. Bauchi Governor Atiku's sons and war of words over 2027 race. The story is on page 7 of The Punch. Beside the masthead of The Punch, Rivers crisis, Fubara blast police over protest clamped down. And atop the masthead of The Punch, Argon calls out AGF on local government autonomy stalemate. Presidency slams Rufai over plot to woo Buhari. Federal government scrambles to avert Genco's shutdown over 4 trillion naira debt. Still also part of the leading story on leadership this morning. Federal government scrambles to avert Genco's shutdown over 4 trillion naira debt. And that concludes review of front headline stories on The Punch this Tuesday. For more, log into the website of The Punch. Let's move in to another story, another paper, almost same headline on Daily Sun, talking about the PDP governors and arising from their meeting yesterday. The PDP governor says we'll stand with Fubara till end. That is the embattled suspended River State governor. We'll stand with Fubara till end via PDP governors. Insists party not joining coalition, which leadership and The Punch has as their cover story. Appoint new acting secretary. We also have the picture of the PDP governors underneath that leading story on the Daily Sun newspaper. My torturous road to becoming AFDB president, coming from Adesina, explains roles Jonathan Buhari, Atiku, Abdulsalami, others played. Rivers Administrator MBA Bika over 300 million naira confirm posting fees. Insecurity, Kalu warns against politicization. Calls for decisive measures. Federal government declares national emergency on food security. That takes us to the story just beneath the masthead of Daily Sun. Recapitalization tariff war, no cause for alarm, banks on sand footing. CBN. UBA GMD lists hurdles to achieving $1 trillion economy. Beside the masthead of Daily Sun, plateau killings, 51 get mass burial as death toll hits 53. Resolve underlying cause of crisis, President tells Plateau Governor. Atiku laments killings, Lapon's federal government. That concludes front headlines review today on Daily Sun newspaper. For more, log into www.thesun.ng. From Daily Sun, we move over to the next paper on our lineup this Tuesday, and that is Vanguard. Vanguard is on Plateau Benue killings. It says Governor Elia threatens. Tinubu gives Mutwang marching orders. Family of 8 wiped out. Armed headers kill 52 in fresh Sunday night attack. Victims given mass burial. Government expresses displeasure. Troops rescue 16 kidnapped victims. Christian leaders plan protest over killings. I can't guarantee visitors to Benue without my knowledge, Governor Elia. Target of Benue governor's threat, Peter Obi. Of course, it will be recalled that Governor Elia has already warned that Peter Obi should not come calling to the visiting to the state, given the number of IDPs that are rising. Peter Obi, the presidential candidate for Labour Party 2023 presidential election, had visited the IDP in Benue State earlier on. Protest in Rivers for emergency rule and protest against emergency rule. These are pictures being carried today on the cover of Vanguard newspaper. Of course, it was recorded. It will be recorded that yesterday some women staged protests, solidarity protests in support of Rivers emergency rule in Port Harcourt, while other women clad in black were also solidarity rally against emergency rule in Port Harcourt, Rivers State yesterday. Vanguard has a picture of both women protests, one in solidarity and one against, on the cover. Emergency rule pro anti-Fubara women protest rock Rivers. The story continues on page 7 of Vanguard. And in sports, NFF denies owing late chairman Atiku. That takes us to the stories about the masthead of Vanguard. We need strong, resilient banks to achieve $1 trillion economy, CBN. 2027, while our party won't join any coalition merger, PDP governors. Electricity, Genco's warn of imminent shutdown over 4 trillion naira debt. Federal government sets 14-month completion deadline for 777 billion naira Abuja Kaduna Zaria Road. The story continues on page 9 of Vanguard. Is on that note, we conclude review of front headline stories on Vanguard this Tuesday. For more, log into the website of Vanguard newspaper, www.vanguardngr.com. From Vanguard, we move to the last paper we have for review, and that is The Guardian. The Guardian says Genco's threatened shutdown over 4 trillion naira debt as Band A customers protest. The story runs on page 6 of The Guardian. In quote, Gencos have continued to ramp up capacity as contractually agreed, but system constraints, forex volatility, and regulatory inconsistencies, compounded by inadequate market remittances, are rendering the sector commercially unviable. End quote. NBA reverse trade wars over conference 300 million naira refund. JAMB warns new upgraded institutions against illegal admissions. Gracing the cover at these news stories. Nigeria loses $2 billion yearly to medical tourism, says party. Work or be privatized, board chairman warns NIPOST. PDP governors show coalition to oust Tinubu. Global Rights Ezekwesili urge federal government to rescue Chibok girls and terrorism. And that takes us to the stories just beneath the masthead of The Guardian. PDP governors demand review of security strategies as plateau death toll climbs to 52. AFCFTA, Nigeria waives duties on 90% of goods traded in Africa. Obi donates 7.5 million naira to plateau IDPs as Benue blocks visit. That concludes a review of front headline stories on The Guardian this Tuesday. For more, log into www.guardian.ng. It's also on this note to bring to a close the first half of this program, Inside Nigeria, where we had newspaper review. Don't go away, stay tuned for the second part of the program, where we'll have our guests joining in to contribute to the trending issues. Stay tuned.
Leadership TV for God and country. Leadership TV for God and country.
Yes, welcome back. In case you're just joining in, the program is Inside Nigeria, where we review front headline stories on newspapers, select newspapers, and of course, join the conversation on trending issues. My name is Winifred Ubebo, once again your host on the program, and of course, I have my Tuesday guest with me in the studio. He is a public affairs analyst, Benedict Agunoyi. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program. So what do we have here? What the papers are saying this Tuesday is about the fallout, the communique arising from the PDP governors meeting in Ibadan, Oyo State, recently, and they came out to reject Atiku, Rufai, and Peter Obi's coalition talks. There's been so much going on about coalition to oust the present administration. However, arising from their meeting, PDP governor said, no, we are not going to be doing any coalition. So what do you have to say about that?
I think they are in the right direction. The reality will be when you form coalition, it is not about the coalition. It's about who is going to fund the process.
Okay.
And I would gladly say that PDP with 11 or 12 governors will be what some of those proposing the coalition look forward to fund the coalition. However, in the way and manners the process has been drawn, I don't think they have carried the governors along sufficiently.
Okay.
So where your interest is not protected, why do you want to put your money there?
However, before you go any further, I would need to remind you that it was also a coalition that actually made APC what it is today. We have CPC, we have the ACN, which meant to form, and even part of AMPP then in those days,
sure.
that was able to route
They-
PDP from power.
They were a coalition, in which case the APC had about 5 or 6 governors coming into the coalition,
Yes.
right? The AMPP had, I think, also a number of governors coming into the coalition. The part of
CPC, we had
ABGA,
one that time, that's what I want.
PPC had Nasarawa governor and they had some senators. The other people, I think ABGA also had a governor. That's the faction of ABGA that joined them, had a governor. So to an extent, and then you of course have external forces who were ready to bankroll the process. So you were actually not looking forward to a single block to run the process. And they were operating from what I would call the level of effective opposition. PDP for me had not played an effective enough opposition in the last 8 or 10 years, in my opinion. They've not been effective enough as an opposition party. And of course, the people who are also postulating and trying to come up with the coalition are obviously, in my opinion, not looking as PDP as the senior partner in whatever coalition that is formed. They just saw them as a people who should tag along because you need to oust the APC. So I think that the governors, majority of whom are actually doing their second term, need to sit down and look at their own position critically before jumping into any bandwagon, so to say. And of course, they have their party to rebuild. They have the structure of the party to work upon. And if there is going to be any form of coalition, I think it's the party chairman, the secretary, and co that should be signing. At the moment, PDP does not have a secretary.
It doesn't.
So the governors have to decide to say, okay, the Southeast is supposed to produce the secretary and we're going to wait for them. So if you don't even have people who sign agreement on your behalf, why are you going into negotiation for that agreement? So I think to a large extent, the PDP governors are right in the position that they have taken.
All right, thank you so much. Now, we just have barely 2 years to go before 2027 election begins. And unfortunately, PDP is so beleaguered by internal wranglings and conflicts. How did it get to this state? And it's a party that we have adults. Why can't they just put their house in order?
Well,
will PDP
now,
be able to stand?
This is my personal opinion, right? And that is that the MPC of the First Republic, the MPN of the Second Republic, and the PDP of the Fourth Republic are what I would call the establishment parties. So they only do well in power. They rely on public funds and public resources and power to harness and oil their processes. So out of power, you expect some of the things happening to them to happen. From 2015 to 2023, you got more of Wike supporting and sustaining them with the muscle that was coming from Rivers.
Yes.
They are out of power at the center, and that in a way is affecting how they oil the wheel of the party. So to a large extent, therefore, you don't expect an establishment person does not do too well as an opposition because it's not used to being in the other side of the table. He's used to be the one here reacting to. He's not used to formulating critics. No, he's used to let's react to it, let's manage it, let's run them aground, let's stop them this way, but not initiating the actions.
Because we have APC, which is incidentally was referred to as a party of strange bedfellows then, who just came together to rout out the party in power, which was PDP then. And strangely enough, going to 10 years down the line, they have been able to keep their house tidy. But PDP has not been able to do that.
Who call them strange bedfellows?
Because they are with one purpose in mind.
No, not just with one purpose. Individually, all those parties that came into the alliance have been strong opposition on their own. Even when ACN had only one governor, which is Lagos, they were standing their ground. AMPP had always stand its ground. CPC came in 2010, 2011. They had only one governor, but they were also taking their stand. So you would look at them as a coalition of effective opposition parties. Today, what you are having is coalition of ineffective opposition parties. PDP today has more strength than AMPP and CPC. But CPC and AMPP were standing their ground when PDP was in power than PDP is doing today. So the word strange bedfellow, I think, wouldn't have been too applicable to them because they were effective opposition who had always stood their ground in the face of all challenges.
Now, like I mentioned earlier, 2027 is just down the corner. What are your permutations for PDP? Will PDP be able to stand strong and go into the elections?
Well, when election comes around, now when you are getting closer...
sorry, just before you also answer that, there's something that PDP is dancing around. They just don't want to. They cannot address frontally, and that is the issue of the FCT minister.
Well, is it that they cannot address it frontally? I don't agree. When PDP was in power, they also had ministers who came from other parties. When MPN was in power, they had ministers who came from other parties. So him coming to work for the government as being appointed a minister, I don't think is too strange. However, the party now again, like I said, from 2015 to 2023, it was possibly the most effective face in the party. And so it means that the party will need to deal carefully with somebody of his stature and contribution and passion. He's been passionate about the party. Less than what has been done to him would have been done to some other people, and they would have put the party. We know the G5 in 2014. They formed new PDP, and they eventually went to APC. And actually went to support APC. He was there in the party. He did not leave, but he was voicing his internal opposition to say that I think that we have not followed our agreement. If you have agreed that presidency should be in the South, then why do you have an Atiku, a Saraki from North Central, Atiku from Northeast, and Tambua from Northwest, challenging to become the presidential candidate of the party? So to a large extent, I think he had a grouse which he was fighting. And even as we speak today, the party has not come down to say we will not accept a presidential candidate from the North. They could have rejected an Rufai or say, okay, they will not take an Atiku. But the practical reality is they have not made that bold statement to say no Northerner will be contesting in 2027. The party has not made that public anywhere.
All right, thank you so much. From politics, we'll move over to security issues in the country. We seem to have a breakdown of security in the country, going by the killings, rampant killings in the two states of Plateau and Benue State. Just on Sunday night, 52 victims were hacked to death. What is happening? Because when the first killing took place, the federal government did direct, or even the chief of defense staff did direct, that they were mobilizing personnel to that place. What happened?
Well, you want to look at it this way. We have issues that are fundamental. Now, I would always say body temperature might be an outward expression of fever, but the vector that is causing the sickness is actually within the body. So addressing the body temperature does not solve the fever. Yes, women will carry towel. You say they are sponging. They are trying to bring down the temperature. But wait for some minutes, because what is generating the problem, the temperature is inside. It will continue to happen. So we need to get to the fundamentals of some of these issues. Why are the killings there?
Because the killings have continued.
Why are the killings there?
Why state of emergency was declared in the state during that year's time?
Yeah. Why was the killing there? What were the ground disagreements? These people lived together up until 2000. That's the practical reality. In some history book that you will read, the very first time Ahmadu Bello visited the Plateau, in the days of MPC, the Fulanis were already living with the people. The Hausas were already living with the people. In the meetings he had, there were names of people like Kazaure, which suggested that that man must have migrated from from the current Jigawa state, that's the old Kano state, must have migrated from that side down to Jos, and because some of them bear the name of their town and their local government, so that suggests that they've lived together for a long time. Okay, at what point did we go wrong? What is the annoyance? What are the fundamental issues? What do we need to define? If we need to go back and look at the basis of the 1976 Land Use Act, and restructure certain things, return some powers to the community. If that had to be done, it needs to be done. Some people cannot be keeping land, place the right strategy as a nation, or the people we have are tired of doing the job. Something definitely is wrong. Otherwise, how do people move and do mindless killing and go away? Even if it's one person that is killed, I still believe that every life matters. So not now talking about 50, 100 and the rest of that. When there was no earthquake, it was not that it's a natural disaster. It is human disaster. So definitely something is wrong with our information gathering system. How can people move in group of 50 or 100? Sometimes they say 200 motorbikes. And nobody saw them moving until they get to the point where the trouble lands. So something is definitely wrong with our information gathering.
And they spent hours on the killing spree without any help.
And when you also come to our responses, I think that we are paying more of lip service, in my opinion, to track and trace and to operational effectiveness. I would always insist, a place like Plateau, a place like Taraba, every area command, we should be getting to the point where perhaps, even if you don't have enough men on ground, you should have an helicopter that can do an area pursuit when there is an incident. The motorbikes might be able to outrun car on a bad road, but the helicopter can do an effective survey. Where are the drones we've been making noise about? So that you can also get the right information. General Tsiga was saying that, look, these bandits, when he was kidnapped, he came out, he said, these bandits do not fear God, but they fear aircraft. So he tells you, therefore, that one of the solutions in track and trace will be in strengthening the air capacity for the army, for the police, for the air force, so that effectively, when you say there are incidents, they can respond. The roads are bad, the terrains are rough. There are parts of Plateau and Taraba that you cannot police effectively. You cannot do a patrol, even with a 4-runner jeep. But with an helicopter, you are likely going to be able to have better success. So we need to begin to redefine the police air wing. We need to begin to redefine the response system. I knew that the late Chief of Army Staff was talking at some point about the air defense coming from the army. How effective or how well developed that is after his death, we might not be able to say. But you need to bring to bear that operational level. There is the need for that helicopter vision, not a plane that will not see what is there, and not the chicken that cannot see beyond his leg. So the boots on ground are not enough, and I think that the equipment support are not enough. And something has to be done drastically about that.
Definitely has to be done, because the killings have continued unabated. Well, that is that on security issues. Another leading story today, carried by all papers, is the issue of electricity, as Genco threatens total shutdown over 4 trillion naira debt. What is happening now? Benedict, I'm beginning to wonder, because our electricity was supposed to be privatized. We saw that happen during President Goodluck Jonathan's tenure. Was it not properly done? Well, at a loss as in
you asked
how
me
they are still being owed 4 trillion naira.
For a straight question, I will tell you it was not properly done. That should settle that, because we were not ready. You couldn't have privatized 18 generating companies with only one transmission system. I believe that by the time we have 18 generating companies, we should have been talking about decentralized transmission. We should have gone away from the current radial system, where everybody resort to national control, to an axial system where you generate in Calabar and you can distribute in the Calabar environs. You are generating in Ilorin, in Kwara, you can distribute within the Kwara and part of Kogi environment. So the transmission is shortened, not that everybody is relying on the same system. So today you are claiming you have a generation capacity of 7,000. You have a transmission capacity of 4.9 or 5,000. It means now generation is like rain. Any rainwater that is not captured is wasted.
It's wasted, yes.
So if you are generating 7,000 and less than 5,000 is being distributed, then you are asking people to pay for 2,000 that was never consumed. So there is no way there won't be debt between generation and distribution, because transmission is saying we can't do more than 5. Generation is saying we are generating 7.5. So who is the excess for? When you cook a food in the house that cannot be preserved and you cook it in excess, the rest of the food is wasted. That's the practical reality. So from the point of disengaging them into the 3 folds, you will realize that we were already set up for this inefficiency that we are seeing today.
It's a contract sacrosanct. Can't the federal government do something about it? Like during the inception of President Bola Tinubu's administration, he did sign the Electricity Act into law, whereby state governors can actually generate their own electricity. But we are not seeing much of that. State governors are not taking advantage of that. We see how states like Bayelsa are crying out that they have not had light or power for maybe 1 year.
You know, obviously there is a new act, but of course there is also the old order. Now, people have invested their money or their time or their expectation in the old order. If the same people have opportunities, they are going to prevent the new order from running. It's like you say fuel today. There are people who could import CNG vehicles, but are they importing? The answer is no. Are we buying electric vehicles? The answer is no. Of course, there is a lot of interest in people who have taken loan to build filling stations that must sell petrol and felt if you move away from petrol, their investment will suffer. So the states have the opportunity to license mini-grid to actually promote off-grid. When we say promote off-grid will permit you in your house, if the design and the technology is right. There are ACs that use solar system. Yeah, there are ACs that use direct current. So you don't even need a converting system. There are refrigerators that use direct current. Are we promoting the assemblage of such in Nigeria? I'm not seeing that done. You see the man with the tricycle in India or in China who is selling ice cream and selling this. He has a roof upon his head, which is a solar panel, and the freezer or whatever he's carrying for the cooling system is running a DC motor. And so direct cooling is happening. But what now between NASENI, the state government, the technology infrastructure building agency, the research in our institution, how well have we directed that and tailor it to ensure that if more people go off grid, if we have mini grids, then you will realize that these big masquerades, the discos, the GEMCOs, and the TCN will begin to come down to realize that they need to do more for the people.
So what is the way forward with this GEMCO of a thing? Are you of the opinion that federal government should overhaul this? Maybe should actually look at their contract again.
Well, in the past, before Abakari died, we were talking about Siemens.
Yes.
Siemens was supposed to produce an alternative grid,
Yes.
which would have possibly allowed some of the GEMCOs to actually effectively cover the areas where they are. But the truth is that we can't say exactly what progress we have made with Siemens. And of course, the Minister for Power, as far as I'm concerned, maybe because he was in CBN when this wrong arrangement happened, he is sympathetic, in my opinion, to the cause of the discos and the GEMCOs. And so when you are supposed to regulate and you sympathize with them, it becomes difficult for us to see the effective regulation, because you are there telling us switch off your fridge, switch off your freezer, when you don't even know when the light will be available. If you are sure of the time the light will be available, then you can say, I'm powering my freezer for these 3 hours, I'm powering my freezer for these 2 hours, and I know that in the 2 hours it can last me for another 24 hours. But you are not even sure when the power will come and when it will go. You are saying people should not buy transformer. Is there a rule today that says if your transformer is down and the disco did not repair or replace in this number of days, there should be permissible downtime, after which the disco will necessarily need to pay fine? There must be consequence to the people who are in the environment. But the consequence is not there. The transformer is down and those unestimated bills are still getting billed. So they are paying for darkness. So discos will be happy because they can generate revenue after not doing anything. So when people keep paying for darkness, when people are without meters, and then they are either underpaying or overpaying, in the end, there is no balance. So there must be that regulation very clear. And like we said, from the end of the state and the local government, the way to go is off-grid and mini-grids. Off-grid and mini-grids, that would actually cause these people to take responsibility. Some banks are more careful now that you have all these fintech people online. The truth is that some of the customers are today more loyal to the fintech people than to the banks. Yes, so the banks now have to begin to sit up and do adjustments. In distribution in those days in beverages, it used to always be big can, 450 gram, 900 gram. But some guys came and began to do sachet. Today, nobody produces beverage in Nigeria and does not have the small size or the small sachet, because they have come to realize that those guys are taking away their market. And except they go there to compete, there will be issues. Everybody that produce carbonated drink today also produce water. So they all have their own version of bottled water, because they realize that water is becoming the major competitor to their pet drinks. So the competition has to be created and has to be balanced. Mini-grid, off-grid must be promoted at the state and the local government level. And research should back it up to ensure that people from clipper to air dryer to home appliances, a number of them can begin to run on DC current. And so you don't even need so much investment beyond your solar panel and what you already have in the house to run to run a system that is not tied to discos and gencos.
All right, thank you so much. That's our take home away panache from today's Inside Nigeria. It's always a pleasure to have my guest every Tuesday, Benedict Agunoye, and I also look forward to having you same time on the station. Well, viewers, this is where we draw the curtain on today's Inside Nigeria. On the first half of the program, we had newspaper review, and on the second segment, we had talk show with our guest in the studio. My name is Rufai. I look forward to having you for our midweek edition, same time, same station tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last